Welcome everyone to our new year. It's 2025. I'm excited for this new year. I'm excited for all that we're going to be doing and what God's going to do in our life and how we can set ourselves up for success this year. And here we are in our first month. We're talking about caregiver burnout, and it's a very important topic. I chose this month to talk about this for a few very specific strategic reasons. Number one, because we just came out of a holiday season, and I have been in a caregiver position for a long time, and I know that holidays is often a time where we give out the most. We give out a lot, and it's really hard to find that rest or that solace. And sometimes we find it difficult to even give ourselves permission to. And so I really felt that coming into the new year, this would be a good topic to cover, so that we can set ourselves up for our new year in a new way. And so I hope that what I have to share today will be meaningful to you and that it will resonate with you and that you can see yourself in the things that I share. Caregiving often calls us to lean into love that we didn't know was possible. If you're on this call or if you're watching this recording, it's because I believe either you are a caregiver or you know a caregiver, and your heart is to offer them support and guidance and help in this time. And if this is you, I just first of all want to honor you. I want to acknowledge the fact that what you do is so important. The care, the love, the support that you're giving to those in your life that need you is invaluable. And I feel like a lot of times we don't give enough credit where credit is due. Um, and especially in a few categories, and I'll get into that in just a few minutes. But I just want to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge the fact that what you do matters, and your love and your care for people is important. And I don't want to in any way minimize that or make you feel like you aren't seen, because not only are you seen, but I know you. I've lived your story, and I've had to learn the really hard way of what comes as a consequence of not um, taking self-care for myself in the light of caregiving for others. And my hope and my desire is that you don't experience those same things. And so I hope you feel honored today. I feel like I hope that you know that the role that you play in the lives of your family, maybe in your workplace, um, maybe with your own children or your own parents, whatever it looks like for you, I want you to know how loved you are, how important you are, and how what you do matters. I am here to acknowledge to you that caregiving is one of the most rewarding jobs, but in my opinion, one of the most demanding jobs. And it's one that I think gets overlooked a lot. And, the mindset around it sometimes is, oh, well, of course she should be caring for those children because 'cause they're her children, right? Like, especially people maybe who haven't had children of their own or haven't had ailing parents. When they look at situations like that, they could really take it for granted and really have no sense of what it really, calls of us, what it demands of us, and what it does to us. And so I acknowledge that it is one of the most demanding jobs out there that you could experience. And also that caregivers are often overlooked and taken for granted. I know that when I was struggling with this, that's often how I felt. I often felt like, and for most of the time, it was because of my own, like, not my own fault, but the way that I was putting myself out there, right? Like, um, I was actually training people to treat me that way. And I think it's important that we kind of understand our role in how we want people. to respond to us, how we want people to relate to us when it comes to the area of caregiving. Um, because I would just always do it because it had to be done and I knew that I would do it right. And that cultivated a culture in my home where it was just like, oh, wow, I don't have to do anything. Right. And so we have to be very careful and recognize maybe when we step into some of those mindsets and when it's not being beneficial to us and when we need to maybe stand up and, communicate and exercise some boundaries so that we aren't overlooked, so that we aren't taken for granted. So the first thing I want to cover is, well, who are caregivers? A caregiver is a person who provides physical or psychological care to someone else. And it's often you're giving care to others who aren't able to help themselves. And sometimes that comes because of age development, either their physical age or their cognitive age. Sometimes you can have full grown adults who operate, at a very low cognitive level. You can also have people with varying mental capacities, coping abilities, declining health, sudden illnesses or injuries, and also long-term other underlying medical conditions. These are all reasons why we step into roles of caregiving. We have people in our lives that are experiencing these struggles, and we love them and we want to provide for them. And so we step into these roles to care for them. Another area which I think is vastly overlooked is parents of young children. And when I had my children, I had them very close together. And so I had 4 boys from the ages of 6 to 1, and it was very taxing on me, and that in itself, I think, because we think, "Well, my children, they don't have any other medical conditions, they don't have any other struggles," but have a human being dependent on us 24 hours of a day, um, that is caregiving, and sometimes I think we don't actually let that register. We don't allow that to, really sit with us and say, "You know what? I am a caregiver, and this is taxing on me, and this is having a toll on my mental, physical, and spiritual well-being." Another area is children with physical or mental challenges. Um, those can come in the form of, uh, behavioral issues or ADHD or autism, Asperger's, all sorts of conditions that impact a child's ability to process their world and to engage in their world, and also the needs that they have on a daily basis. And as well, those of us that are caring for elderly family members. Um, none of these last 3 that I've mentioned are paid positions, right? When we talk about caregivers, in a role of, a nurse in a hospital or a frontline worker or someone even like a respite worker, someone who is that is their job, that is their role. I feel like they get a lot more acknowledgement, recognition. They get, they get paid for their job, but being a parent, being a child of an elderly parent, these are things that we never get compensated for, and most of the time we don't even get acknowledged. And I feel like that is part of the problem to caregiver burnout. Um, because we are giving and giving and giving, and we don't feel seen. We don't feel like it matters. It obviously matters to the person we're caring for, but not to those at large. These are some other areas where people can be considered caregivers: children of ailing parents with limited mobility, health concerns, dementia, Alzheimer's, cancer, other debilitating diseases. Um, spouses of those who have physical or mental injuries. I've heard of spouses who all of a sudden one day their husband or wife end up being in a critical accident, and next thing you know, they are dealing with paraplegic or loss of mobility, or even cognitive abilities, right? We can have this caregiving role thrust on us at any moment. And if we don't have the tools to advocate for ourselves, and an understanding of what burnout looks like, it can be easy for us to fall down on this slippery slope and you know get to a place where we are no longer able to care for those that we want to. Another area would be if we're supporting others with mental health issues. This is also a large demographic of people. There's sometimes people who are struggling so much with depression, anxiety, other mental health concerns, they can't even physically get out of bed. And, you know, a lot of us fall in the category of caring for these kind of um, people. And there's not always a lot of information surrounding that. And we can be left sometimes feeling like, you know, what about me? What about my situation? What about what my family member needs? Um, and then, of course, the ones that we readily think about are people like pastors, counselors, life coaches, mentors, or frontline workers. Now, when I think of caregivers, these are some of the adjectives that came up for me. And if you find yourself in a role of caregiving, I just want you to look at this list and, you know, how many of these words are a reflection of who you are, right? We've got loving, we have compassionate, we have caring, selfless, you operate with empathy, you believe in those that you're caring for, you're faithful, you show up every single day, you're resourceful. Sometimes you make something out of nothing. You respect those that you're caring for. You have a special place in your heart for these people. And, in some ways you're like, I would give up my life for you so that you could live a better life. Honor, patience. I tell you, we require patience when it comes to caregiving. You're also very giving of your emotions, giving of your time, giving of um, your presence and other material things that the people that you're caring for need. I feel like you also have a sense of humor. You have to sometimes be willing to just laugh at what's going on. If you don't laugh, you're gonna cry, right? I've been there. I've experienced that. There's days where it's just like, I literally just have to laugh at this. Otherwise, I'm gonna just lose my mind, right? Um, you have to be present in the moment. That's a big one. Learning how to be present in the moment. These are characteristics that you guys have. This is who you are. This is why you're able to show up every day, day in, day out, to care for these in your life. You're flexible, you're trustworthy, you communicate, you're hopeful, you advocate for those that you're caring for. That's a major one. You advocate for them. You see a need and you want to fulfill it. And you're going to find resources and support to do so. You are also positive. Now, why did I bring up these characteristics of caregivers, right? Two reasons. Number one, because I feel like sometimes we can lose sight of who we are, right? We get so entwined into the lives of those that we're caring for, we forget about how amazing we are and who we have to be in order to engage in this kind of care and work towards other people. The other reason I wanted to bring it up is for you to become aware of the fact that these are all amazing qualities, but sometimes it sets us up for challenges. And I'm going to use a couple examples. Um, let's start with selfless, right? Sometimes when you operate from a place of selflessness, you're willing to give everything you have to another person. You're willing to sacrifice. You're willing to put your needs on hold. You're willing to put your time, your energy, your efforts on the line for someone else. But if this isn't done in a balanced way, it can actually become something harmful to you, right? This is a good characteristics of who you are, but if it's not in balance, if it's not um, treated with the honor it deserves, you become so selfless that you don't feel like you even deserve to be cared for, right? You start making choices and decisions that don't honor who you are, right? And so, even though these are amazing qualities of us and we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them, we have to realize that we can't take them to the extreme. We can't let them take over our lives to the point where we don't advocate for ourselves. And that's another word, advocacy. For those that we care about, we will advocate for them until we find the solutions we need. But what about for you? When was the last time you advocated for yourself? Right? This is a skill, this is a gift that you have, but oftentimes as caregivers, we extend all of these to those that we're caring for, and we don't always reflect them back to ourself, right? To be patient with ourself, to be giving to ourself, to allowing us ourselves to um, be compassionate towards ourself even. And so as I keep sharing today, I just want you to kind of keep that concept in your mind and recognize if as I'm sharing and as I'm talking, if you're recognizing that maybe parts of who you are and your character and your love to serve others and your love to care for others is impacting you in a negative way because you've taken it too far to the other extreme, I want you to jot these things down because it's going to be important for you to look at those things and address them in order for you to stay off what I call the burnout road. Because all of these things, if we do them consistently in an outward fashion and not reflect it back to ourselves, it's going to lead us into burnout. And that's what I want all of you to avoid. So, what is caregiver burnout? It is the state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion that occurs in your life when you experience prolonged stress and lack of support. I can tell you from experience that caregiving is stressful. You never know what's going to come that day. Thank you, Larissa. Yes, it's also compassion fatigue. That's right. You never know what's going to come. You always have to be on alert. You always have to be on your guard. You always have to be ready to act in a single moment. And when we live that way for a prolonged amount of time and we don't have, resources or support or prioritize self-care in those moments, it can have a devastating effect on our life. Um, I lived most of my younger years in a constant state of stress. Um, when I was younger, Connie is my sister. She's 5 years older than me. When she left the home to go to university and college, I felt like the role as caregiver in our family had to fall onto me. And so I remember at the age of like 12, 13, 14, taking on a lot of responsibility in our home. Um, that continued into my adulthood with people in my life. Then I got married, had children, and I lived out this constant state of, pouring out to others, giving my life to those in my life that needed me, that needed what I had, but I lacked the wisdom and the skill set of what it meant to take care of myself. In fact, when I hit my full burnout, physical and mental burnout at the age of 30, and I was seeing my counselor weekly to kind of work through my issues, the one thing that came up from that was I had no idea what self-care meant and what it looked like for me. I had no idea what would give me rest, what would help me refresh myself, what would help me be re-energized, because I had never operated that way. My thoughts, my actions were always external. They were always to please someone else. And so we have to be very careful when it comes to caring for others that we don't fall into that same trap. It's important to recognize the signs of burnout so we can avoid them. There's many signs, and most of these signs I ignored all along the way. Some of them are feeling stress over normally manageable things. So things that wouldn't be normally very easy for me to handle, I could cope very well with them. If I'm feeling stressed and feeling like I'm needing time for self-care, those things will usually send me over the edge. There'll be times where it's just like, I can't deal with this right now. And it's something so simple. And it's at times like that, now I recognize when I get to that point, I need to take a step back. I need to take some time for myself and I need to take care of me. I will also feel physically drained. It's just like I feel like I've literally had every ounce of energy just completely drained out of me. I feel like there's absolutely nothing I could do to keep moving forward. You might also feel emotional numbness, right? Where it's just kind of like you become a numb to your feelings and what's going on around you, and you're literally just going through every day, just doing what you have to do, completely numb. You may also have an inability to enjoy things that you once enjoyed. Maybe you used to find enjoyment or rest in going for long walks, right? But if you are in a place of extreme fatigue and burnout, even the thought of going for a restful walk would be just exhausting. You would just be like, I can't do that. You might also have difficulty starting or completing tasks. Um, and you might say to me, well, Laura, some of these things I feel on a daily basis, or some of these things maybe I don't feel are associated with, my caregiving role or burnout. And maybe they aren't. But I think that these are some very common signs that you might experience when you're experiencing burnout. And I think sometimes we misdiagnose these things, right? Like, we sometimes think, well, I'm just physically drained because I'm tired. And it might be, but maybe you're physically drained because you are lacking self-care. And so I think these are important things for us to, really consider. Why am I feeling these ways? And is my role as a caregiver and my lack of self care contributing to these things? Because if it is, that's controllable. That's something that you can change. That's something that you can improve on. You might also neglect responsibilities. We become very responsible when it comes to the needs of others, but sometimes we neglect our own. Sometimes we'll just put them on the sidelines and don't deal with them. We might also rest, but we still feel depleted. That fatigue that never seems to go away, that is a definite red flag and sign that we are not getting enough personal rest and time away. You might also find yourself doing excessive passive activities. That could be like scrolling on your phone, things that are non-productive, things that are just literally taking your thoughts like away from your life, away from what you had to deal with today. Um, that could be a sign that you need some more personal rest in your life. Another one could be need for instant gratification. When you feel like, I just need to fill this need in myself, and sometimes it can be an addicting habit. Um, but you just want to fill that need and you fill it right away, right? or another one could be boredom. Some other ones could be you feel withdrawal from friends, family, or loved ones. I know when I am kind of at my limit and I have not had much margin in my life, I just don't even want to be with anyone. I don't want to be with friends. I don't want to be with loved ones. I don't want to be with family. I just want to be alone. And that is potentially another sign that you're experiencing signs of burnout. You might also feel hopeless or helpless, right? That that feeling like, you're in this all alone and everything depends on you, and if you don't do it, um, it's not going to get done, but you feel helpless to change, right? You feel like there are no options, right? If you start thinking in those ways, then you're stepping into that burnout mindset because, one of the characteristics I talked about us as caregivers is we're resourceful, right? So when we no longer are able to think and strategize and network to the place where we're being resourceful and able to find strategies and be an advocate, when we start stepping into hopelessness and helplessness, that is a good sign that we're starting to feel burnt out. You might also experience changes in your appetite or your weight, definitely changes in your sleep patterns. Um, I find that if I am in long periods of extreme stress, sleep gets difficult. Your mind races at night, your body can't relax. You're always in a fight or flight response. And even when you do sleep, you're not getting into REM sleep, so your body's not having that deep sleep time to restore itself. So our sleep gets impacted very significantly. You might be unable to concentrate. Um, Definitely you'll get sick more often, or even worse, have more serious health concerns. Um, you will feel irritability, frustration, and anger towards others. Sometimes you'll exhibit that towards those you're caring for. For me, that's a really big red flag. If there's someone I'm caring for and all of a sudden I'm like losing my temper and snapping at them, I know that I need to take a step back. I want to go back to the one about getting sick more often and having serious health concerns. The reason I want to bring this one up for you is because all of these symptoms and signs of burnout that I've mentioned here, I was having these all along for 20 years, and I ignored them. I ignored them to the point where I would just brush them off as something else. I would just say, well, I'm just tired for this reason. I wouldn't really look at it. I didn't prioritize doing something about it. And at the end of the day, it wasn't until my physical health was impacted in a negative way that I actually took a serious look at my life. I took a serious look at how I was operating and how it was impacting not only me, but those that I was caring for. And unfortunately for me, um, that journey for my health was a very long process. It was um, from the time I started having some serious health symptoms show up to the point where had my doctors diagnose me with fibromyalgia. It was 8 years. And in that 8 years, while still caring for my children, caring for my niece and nephew who came to live with me because of their troubled home, um, working full time in my husband's business from home, and also caring for my husband's ailing parents. It was in that time that I hid from most of those people that knew me how bad my health was getting. And it was many, many years into my health crisis that I was getting to the point where I couldn't hide it from people anymore. And I still remember the day when I realized that I could not keep going the way I was going and I had to ask for help. And my oldest was 6 or 7 at the time, and my youngest was 1, and it was like 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the morning, and I was looking at my children on the couch watching TV, and I didn't have anything in me to even make them a meal. And this had been going on for a long time, and I realized in that moment how desperate I had become and how even the basic needs of my own children were being neglected because I just had nothing left. And it was in that moment I called Connie, my sister, and long story short, they ended up coming and living with me for 8 months while I recovered, while I got help, while got rest, and I started seeing my counselor to deal with the underlying reasons why I couldn't say no, why I couldn't put up boundaries, why I always put other people's needs before my own. You know, what was the mindsets and mentalities around, you know, my propensity to put my own life in a detrimental state for the purpose of others. And those were really difficult lessons to learn. But here I am. Now I'm almost in my health journey. It took me a year. After my diagnosis, the doctors wanted me to go on meds, and they told me that there was no cure and I would live like this forever. But I was determined that that was not going to be the end of my story. And I found a holistic, natural way of dealing with a lot of these issues. And now it took me a full year from the point that I started with some holistic health practices to when I found that, wait a minute, I have no symptoms anymore. And I've been free of these symptoms for now almost 4 years. And the lessons that I learned in this period of time have been game changers for me. Some of the things that I've learned was about the importance of boundaries. The other one is the importance of self-care. And if you get nothing out of what I share today, I hope it's that you have a resolve in your life about self-care. Because if you don't care for yourself, your own mental, physical, and spiritual well-being, then there's going to come a point that you're going to experience what I did, which was full, complete burnout, and you're not going to be able to be there for those that you love. And none of us want to get there. And it is a very tricky path to be on because it almost disguises itself. It almost sneaks up on us. All of a sudden, we know these things are gradually happening, but then all of a sudden the impact and the effects of them show up in our life in a very drastic and dramatic way. So how do we avoid this? I believe it comes down to one simple word. God has called us to carry each other's burdens, and in this way we'll fulfill the law of Christ. This is really the mindset behind caregiving, right? Is that we carry the burdens of others. But we have to include ourselves in the equation. We need others to help carry our burdens. We need to have others contribute to our life. And when we neglect that, when we see other people as more important, then we set ourselves up for a difficult road. What I believe is the key to avoiding burnout is respite. And what respite is a short period of rest or relief from something taxing, difficult, or draining. It's a break for caregivers. I think when we think of respite, we often think, well, respite is actually for those that we're caring for. But if you think about what respite is actually for, it is for us. It's actually for your benefit, right? Because when we find respite, when we find someone to take our role so that we can take care of ourselves, that person that we're caring for, they're still being cared for. Their needs are still being met. But at that same time, we are prioritizing our own care. We're taking care of ourselves so that we can continue to be the amazing blessing of a caregiver that we are to those in our life. And so I want you to shift your thinking, right? Because for many years, and even with my nephew who we adopted, for many years, every year we go through a meeting with the social workers, and they say to me, Laura, have you benefited or have you utilized the respite? And, oftentimes I have to say, no, I haven't. Right. But the question is, why? Why haven't I? Right. And sometimes we have this mentality or this mindset that, well, I don't need it. Right. But if we don't take it now, will it really be available there when we need it? And, for me, when I hit burnout, it took me out completely. It's not like, well, I can just take a break later, right? Once you get to the point of burnout, it's your time of recovery is going to be extensive. It's going to be long term. Mine took between 8 months and a whole year just to recover from the burnout portion. That didn't include any of the health concerns that I had. So we have to understand that respite is for our benefit. It's for us to take a break before it becomes a crisis. In the same way you offer compassion and care to those you care for, you need to offer that same compassion and care to yourself. What would that look like for you, right? Um, what is it that you need? And maybe you're going to be like me. Maybe you have absolutely no idea. Maybe even the thought of making respite and rest a regular part of your routine feels like I'm gonna be unproductive. I'm not gonna be using my gifts to the best of my ability. I'm not going to be making an impact. But I'm here to tell you, if you don't prioritize self-care, there is going to come a point in time when you are not able to be that caregiver that you want to be. We have to be proactive. We need to be preventative. We need to take care of ourselves now so that we don't ever encounter that. So, why are some reasons it's hard to accept respite? These are some I came up for with. Some of them you might resonate with. You might have other ones that are completely different than these. But these are some of the ones that I had. I would feel guilt for leaving the ones that I was caring for. Um, One example of that is Doug's parents. They were in the late stages of their life. His dad had just passed away. His mom was, at that time, she was living with us, and she was struggling with dementia. And this not only impacted me, but it impacted our whole family. My son was displaced even from his bedroom. She had to stay in his bedroom. But I was getting to the point where I was needing rest. And I had to take a weekend away. I had to take time away to rest and take care of myself. And in doing so, like, you sometimes have to struggle with that feeling of guilt. Like, I'm leaving this to everyone else. I'm leaving my mother-in-law alone. Um, there's something innate about caregivers that when we're not there to do the role that we've signed up for, we sometimes feel like when we step aside from that, that we feel guilt. We can feel like we're somehow letting others down by taking time off to rest. Another major one that I had to deal with was pride, not wanting to admit or accept the fact that I needed rest or care. That was one reason why I couldn't, for years, even tell people what was going on in my life, how desperate things had gotten, and how desperate I was for help. It was pride, right? I had put on this facade that I was perfect, that I had it all together. People would often say to me, Laura, I don't know how you do it. You're a superwoman. I felt like I had to keep up this facade. I felt like if I somehow admitted that I was needing help myself or that I couldn't continue at the magnitude I was going, that somehow I was showing weakness. And I didn't want others to see me that way. And so out of pride, I would not accept help. I would not even admit I needed help, and it was to my detriment. And so sometimes pride holds us back from accepting help. Another one is we could fear the critical opinions of others who don't understand how taxing it is to care for another. This is real. There are people out there that have no clue. They have no idea what it's like to, show up every day for your parent who has forgotten who you are and repeats the same stories over and over again, and sometimes has these bouts and fits of aggression against you and speaks these words to you that cut you to the heart, but you love them so much that you are willing to show up to that every single day. There are people that don't understand. They've never been through it. They've never experienced it themselves. They don't understand, and so sometimes we fear what other people are going to say, what they're gonna think, how they're gonna relate to us if they find out that, we're taking time for ourselves. And is that rational? Probably not, but it is definitely something that I think is real, something that we feel. I felt it, and I'm sure that you have as well. Another one, we can feel like we can't afford to take time away. That was another major one for me, is the cost of me not being there and doing what I had to do. I felt like the cost of that, me not being there, was too high, right? Sometimes I couldn't afford to pay for respite. Sometimes, um, there was there would be consequences for me not to be there at that time, right? So sometimes that will keep us from, really stepping into rest. We might also feel like taking time for ourselves is selfish, right? Our role as a caregiver, we're selfless. We are always giving of others. And sometimes we might take on that mindset that for me to prioritize myself, for me to prioritize rest, that's really selfish. And I can't be thinking about myself. I'm thinking about this person who is struggling with mental health. This person who, can't even get out of their chair to have a shower or feed themselves. Like, we sometimes think that for me to think that I need to take a day away to rest and refresh myself, that that's selfish because this person is in such a more difficult place than I am. But remember this, that when you choose to get help, when you choose to find respite, you're not leaving that person high and dry. You're providing another option for them so that they can still get the care that they need, but so that you can as well. Another one is FOMO, the fear of missing out on moments. You know, especially with my mother-in-law in her last days, um, there was days where I knew I just could not go. I could not go and be with her and tend to her, but I also knew that these were precious moments. I knew that she only had weeks. I knew that the time was running short, and there was, even with my dad and his passing this past, year, in the last week of his life, I was there every day, and journeyed with him through his suffering, and it was hard to be there, but at the same time, I wanted those last moments with my dad, right? And so sometimes we sacrifice so that we have those moments, but sometimes we just, even the fear of missing out on a moment would cause us to prolong our stay in a place that is gonna eventually have negative consequences for us. So we need to be mindful of that as well. And then the last thing I want to bring up is, because we're so responsible for others, I believe that a lot of times that means we neglect the responsibility to care for ourselves. If we don't prioritize rest, we will be forced into it because of illness, disease, and burnout. This was my experience. And you might say to yourself, yeah, but it's not that bad, Laura. It's not going to get like that for me. If you continue down this path of always serving others and not prioritizing rest, this is the destination. I didn't think it either until I hit that place and I had to live out the consequences of that, and I had to actually heal from that season of my life. And it took me out for a long time. And, looking back, maybe God allowed that so that I could be here talking to you today about this, that I would have some contribution, be able to give you some foresight, some encouragement to really prioritize this and take it seriously now so that you will always be available for those who need you. But don't be fooled, this is real. And maybe as I've been talking, you recognize the fact that, you know what? I am experiencing some forms of burnout. I need to really adjust. I need to really rethink this. And um, I'm going to share with you how I do that, how I shifted, how I changed from who I was and how I operated before to how I am now, and how I can still care for people in the same capacity and in some ways even more so, and do it without sacrificing myself. Do it and still be able to get the rest I need every night. I honestly feel in this stage of my life that nothing's impossible for me. And I attribute that to the fact that I have learned some really hard lessons and I've established some very non-negotiable routines in my life that allow me to be my best self. And so that's my hope for you, that you can do what you do in the best way for the longest time and feel the most fulfilled. The cost of waiting to rest until you're burnt out will be prolonged periods of time to restore yourself. I can't stress this enough. If we wait till something happens, the results of that are going to be far harder to deal with than if you deal with it as you're going along. Hebrews 4 verses 9 to 11. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest will also rest from his work, just as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will fall by their following their example of disobedience. There's a reason why God created the Sabbath. It wasn't for him, it was for us. God created rest so that we could enter into that rest and then continue on serving others in the way that we need to, whether we're a parent, whether we're a child of aging parents, whether we have a job that's in the industry of caregiving, whatever it looks like for you, we need to prioritize Sabbath rest. And I believe that that means daily rest, weekly rest, monthly rest, and yearly rest. And I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. What are some of the things that you can expect as a result of taking time for respite? And this, for me, this is a really refreshing way to look at it, because a lot of times we think, well, when we think of needing to take time to rest, well, what will be the benefits of it, right? It's hard sometimes to see what benefits would come from that. But this really stood out to me because, you know, when we take time for respite, it allows us to replenish ourselves, right? We find rest. We get regrouped. It also helps me regulate myself, right? When those times when I've gotten to the point where I'm losing it on the people that I care about, it helps. When I take time away, it helps me to re-regulate myself, regulate my own emotions, how I process information. I get, excuse me, I get renewed. I feel like a relief, right? I allow my body to repair itself, right? Because if we're constantly giving, that is doing damage to our bodies, right? And we need to give our bodies time to repair. And that includes good night's rest every day. Because like I mentioned earlier, it's actually in our sleep when our bodies repair itself. So look at these words. These are all words that I'm like, even as I read them, rest, reset, restore, rejuvenate, recalibrate. Like I can already feel my body starting to like realign itself with rest, with relaxation, right? When we shift our perspective, instead of it being us taking it, respite being something that's taking us away from our role, our gifting, our responsibility, and we look at it as actually a gift to ourselves where we're going to be refreshing ourselves and repairing and becoming rejuvenated. I think that that has a potential to really shift your perspective and look forward to these times of rest. In fact, that's exactly what happened to me because, at first I resisted it. At first, I was just like, I can't do this. I need to keep going. But as I started to implement practices of self care in my life on a regular basis, now I actually crave it. Not to the point where it takes me away from my responsibilities, but to the point where it's like, I know, okay, this is my time to retreat. This is my time to find rest and respite. And I look forward to it. I already can, before I even enter into that, whether it's a time of rest, a place of rest, whatever that looks like for me, I already feel, the cells of my body starting to breathe easier, the stress and the frustration lifting off of me. So, all of these words that you see here on the screen, these are available to you when you start to prioritize rest in your life. And for me, honestly, I think, well, why wouldn't I do it? Why wouldn't I prioritize this in my life if this is going to be the impact for me personally? Because if I'm operating from this place, I am going to be the best person to be caregiving and giving out from a place of abundance and a place of being full and a place of more than enough than when I'm depleted and I'm, barely getting through my days, right? My level of caregiving is going to be that much better. So, what we're going to work on today is making a plan ahead of time. My recommendation is to schedule regular times to get rest to avoid burnout. Now, I recommend prioritizing rest into your daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly routines. Um, I like to point out the fact that oftentimes, like I said earlier, those that care for others, it's often not a job position. You are not being paid for this. You're often not being compensated in any way whatsoever. But even when it comes to a job, right? They allow their employees to have a paid lunch break for every 8-hour period of work, right? They get um They get 2 weeks paid vacation a year. They have the opportunity to have sick days or be able to take days off to go to appointments or do other things, right? This is a mindset that's in our workforce that is allowed and provided for the basic worker, but why don't we provide it for ourselves? Why don't we allow us as caregivers that same respect, that same offering? Right? We give in, day out, selflessly, often without any compensation whatsoever. We deserve that same allowance of recharge. So, when you're considering how and what you need to do to care for your loved ones, I want you to include yourself on that list, right? Let's say you're caring for children, you're ailing parents, maybe someone has just recently been in a major um, accident or has a health crisis and you're helping out with those things. Whatever that looks like, make sure that you are on that list. What do you need? And how can you implement things in your daily life that will bring you life? Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30 says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me that I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." In my journey of healing from burnout, I found uh, I found help in many ways. Most of all, it was in my relationship with God. And he had to challenge me on many mindsets. He had to show me a lot of beliefs that I had that were not true and were also not serving me. But he also had to show me how to unburden myself to him. Because a lot of times, too, with those that we care about, we take on those burdens, we carry them ourselves. And those were never ours to carry, and it's important for us to learn how to bring all of those things that we care about, all of those things that we find, um, that we deal with on a daily basis, and bring it to the Lord and let Him give us His rest. And so that's why one of my daily practices is I wake up a few hours before anyone in my household and I just spend a couple hours to myself. I spend it in prayer, I spend it in worship, I spend it in journaling, and I start my day off well. By the time my family gets up, by the time I have to step into my daily routines and the jobs needed from me, I am refreshed. I'm ready to go. And I think not only is that beneficial, but I think it's exponentially better because I'm spending that time with God. I'm able to hear his heart from me. I'm able to really reflect on what he's doing in my life and speaking to me at the time and what he wants me to focus on. And so I encourage you to prioritize quiet time with the Lord every day. What does that look like for you? Maybe for you, that's going to be at your lunch break. Maybe for you, that's going to be before bed. I know for me, I couldn't do it at bedtime because by the time I got to bedtime, I was tired. My mind was tired. All I wanted to do was rest and fall asleep and, you know, start over the next day. And so for me personally, the mornings are the best. I start my day off right. I start my day off with the right mindset, and I actually set the tone for my day. And I know for many of you that might be difficult, but for whatever way you need to do it, that's fine. Maybe you're not a morning person, but for me, that's what worked. Another area where I implemented self-care is on a weekly basis. And on a weekly basis, I like to take one day, one evening for myself. And some weeks I haven't done such a good job of that. But my priority this year is to make it a non-negotiable every week that on Thursdays, especially Thursday evenings, that I will be retreating to my writer's loft up in our barn and just spending that whole day by myself, um, in my loft, and staying up there, sleeping up there, and taking an evening for myself. And I think it's important that you do that. And then the way that I like to prioritize self care on a monthly basis is to take a weekend away, whether it's take a weekend, to celebrate my birthday with my husband or by myself or um, go to the mountains with a girlfriend, but just take a weekend away where I'm not responsible for anyone else. There's nothing that is required of me. I can just be. I can just be myself. And then the last thing is, aligning yourself with the principle of, that 2-week vacation a year. Take time every year to take a few weeks off. And Connie and I have gotten into the practice of doing this at the end of the year. We've been working on carving out a couple weeks just before Christmas or around Christmas to, um, you know, not do any work and just take that time to rest. Take that time to get extra sleep, to allow God to speak to us about our new year, about what He wants us to focus on in the new year and strategize and do things that are life giving to us. So I hope that through all of this, you've realized just that the need for rest, the need for self care. And there's other ways that you can find that. For me, I find it mostly in solitude, in being alone, in quiet reflectiveness. But maybe for you, you're a hiker. Maybe you love nature. Maybe for you, self-care is going to look like taking a trip to the mountains every every month and going on a long hike. Whatever it looks like for you, you can you can establish this in whatever way is best for you, but the point is that you do it. You actually prioritize yourself, you prioritize rest in your life, you make this important, you schedule it in, right? Because if we don't schedule it in, it won't happen, right? And make it a non-negotiable. And I had to get to the point where someone would ask something of me or need something of me, and I would say, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. I have an appointment at that time." The only thing that they didn't know it was an appointment with myself, right? Um, so it's important that, um, you schedule it in, because if you schedule it in and you prioritize it, then it will happen. So every week, month that we meet, we like to do an activation. And so this month's activation is I want you guys to create a plan for rest. Now, there's no question that we all need to prioritize rest. But the first thing I want you to do is, assess how you are doing right now. Through everything that I shared so far, are you starting to see some signs of burnout in your life? And if that is the case, what are you going to do about it? I want you to use this next 5 or 6 minutes as Connie puts on some music to strategize. Think of some things that will really help you rest, rejuvenate yourself, find recalibration. What does that look like for you? What are some priorities that you have? And plan it out. How will you prioritize to find rest every day? How will you find it weekly, monthly, yearly? And find a way to block it off on your calendar. And then the last step is brainstorm people that you can ask help from beforehand, like someone who can help with respite. If you have children and you need someone to come and stay in your home and care for those children while you are gone, or that while you take some time away, um, brainstorm who you can trust. You might have to look through some agencies, respite agencies. You might have to ask friends who are also dealing with some of the same things as you are, who they use for their respite. But make a plan and then contact them. If you know ahead of time what you're going to be doing, then you can schedule these times of respite, right? Even with my nephew, he is special needs and he lives with us, and I'm working on getting him a respite worker every Wednesday evening that he can be taken out and go experience things and have a friend. And it gives us, a break at home and be able to spend time together as a family. So, look for ways that you can find that help, find that respite. And you want to do it before you get to the point that I did, where my sister actually had to come and live in my home for 8 months. So, Connie, can you put on a song about 5 or 6 minutes long? And I just want you to, grab a piece of paper, grab a journal, and just start answering some of these questions and reflecting on what I shared today and how it is applicable to you and your situation. So each time we meet together, I like to give us just three keys or three things to remember from what I shared, because I know I shared a lot, but three of the takeaways that you I hope that you take from today is that number one, having a proactive plan in place for regular rest and respite is necessary to avoid burnout. Number two, we need to offer the same compassion and care towards ourselves that we would offer to those that we care for. And number three, if you don't care for yourself before you reach burnout, the consequences are extreme and take a very long time to recover from. It's easier to stop something from happening than to repair the damage after it's already happened. And I like the saying from Benjamin Franklin, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound in cure. So I hope you experience three things from today. Number one, feel validated that what you do is important and that you have so much love to give, and that's why you care so deeply. And number two, that you recognize that if you're struggling in any of the ways that we talked about, that it might be a sign that you need to start creating a plan um, for more consistent rest, more consistent self care, respite, so that you can be your best in all circumstances. And number three, that by living a life um, prioritizing rest and self care, you can essentially be your best self at all times. That you can be giving from abundance, that you can be giving from your overflow and not from an empty bucket. And I believe that that's what we all want. When I give from abundance, when I give from the overflow of what's in my life, it's always so rewarding. It's always such a awesome way to live my life, to be able to give others from my abundance and see them be encouraged, see them encouraged by it. So I thank you for joining us. And I leave you with this one scripture, Isaiah 40, verse 31. But those who hope in the Lord, they will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. May you find all that you need in Christ. Let you share your burdens with Him and let Him give you the rest that you need in every area of your life. Before we finish up this portion, I just want to go over some announcements, some things that are coming up, things that we should be mindful of. Our next month's webinar is called The Three Pillars of Relationship. And Connie and I believe her husband will be presenting on the three pillars, which are trust, love, and communication within relationships. So if you resonate with this topic, we encourage you to come back, or if you know anyone who would benefit from learning more about this topic, I encourage you to share this with them and encourage them to join us next month on February 6th, same time here on Zoom. And if you already registered for today, you had an opportunity to click the box. You can be pre-registered to future webinars. And if you chose not to click that box, if you want to join this one and you want to be sent the Zoom link, because the Zoom link changes every month, then please do go back to the website and register, and we will make sure that you're on the list to receive those notifications. This is another amazing opportunity that we are launching here in the new year in partnership with Ramona. It is the Kingdom Business Builders Collective, and it's an opportunity for those that care about kingdom building on this earth, bringing the kingdom of God to the earth at this time. And we do it through all of our spheres of influence, whether it's in our workplaces, in our businesses, in our families. And we are all called to leadership. We are all called to kingdom building and in many ways to entrepreneurship. And if you want to come join us for a time of unity, like time of worship, equipping, and like-minded community, we encourage you to come. It's on January 21st at from 6 to 8 p.m. And Ramona, did you want to share a couple more words about that?
Sure, I could just say it's for one of the things we said there was for like-minded community. So you would meet other people who are on the same journey as you, looking to implement kingdom principles and values in their life.
Awesome. And you can register for that on the NOSA website at nosafoundation.com. It is a event you have to register for ahead of time. Please, you can find the link there, and please share it with others as well that you know would like to be part of this new initiative. And it's going to be the intention is that it'd be monthly, the third Tuesday evening of every month. And so this is something too that you can pre-plan for and put on your calendar so that you can join us every month. So thank you for joining us again as on our webinar, and we'll see you next month as we talk about the three pillars of relationships.